The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. We're going to be looking at the Shobogenzo today, and before I venture forth in that direction, I wanted to say a few things. One is to just listen very carefully for Dogen, that is the scholar, the teacher, both of laity and monastics, the mystic and the poet. That was the title of the retreat. As we've heard over the last few days, Dogen was trained very well in the Buddha Dharma as a very young person, so was quite a scholar throughout his teaching career. And that shows itself in the Shobogenzo. And the teacher is very evident in that, in addition to giving us the reason for training, he gives us practices to do in order to do that training. Very nicely and easy to follow. No matter whether you're a layperson or a monastic. We keep coming back to this Shobogenzo throughout the years of our practice. It never gets very far away from any of us. And then there's the mystic and the poet. You sense Dogen's experience and certainty in the words that he offers us. And of course the words that he offers are very poetic in many different ways. Now this talk is going to be a wee bit more formal, and within that you will hear Dogen's deep care and concern for all beings. The purpose for putting this particular teaching out. I realize when I say that this was all done before, recently in the last 100 years, the Shobogenzo itself was created, and yet Dogen still rings through, whether it's the Shobogenzo or all the various translations that we read. He comes through no matter who is doing that translating. We can hear him, his deep experience, and his deep care for all humanity, beings, and non-sentient beings. The gentle heart is there to help us along the way. And do remember, as it's been stated throughout this retreat, these teachings are about you, whether laity or monastic. These are the teachings that are coming directly to us and to be utilized as we practice the way of realization. So, Shobogenzo, what is truly meant by training in enlightenment? This is the title, what Shobogenzo means. And this scripture is a boiled-down version of Great Master Dogen's teachings from the Shobogenzo and possibly other forms or other sources. It was put together by the Soto Zen Church many years ago and was grouped into 5 essays that delineated the 5 forms of guidance and practice that Dogen emphasized in his teachings for walking the Buddhist path of awakening. This project made Dogen's Dharma available to many who did not have access previously. It was a very generous and kind act that this was put together for people. And to this very day, the Shobogenzo continues to guide and instruct us in our practice. In the very beginning, when we walk in the door for meditation instruction, it is there. And in the middle, as we've trained throughout the years, we continue to refer to the precepts, to the way of a bodhisattva and the gratitude. And it continues to guide us always in the future as, O Buddha, going on beyond in our training. Through these teachings, we learn how to live with compassion, dignity, and being upright. It's the way we express Buddha. As these conditions appear before us, actualizing our inherent enlightenment within the Buddhist tradition. the activity of a Buddha in his or her dignified presence. While I was reading the Shoshogi and other writings of Dogen over these last several months, the phrase that came to my mind to describe his theme in authenticating Buddha's teaching on his return from China was sanctifying the mundane. I think I've mentioned that before, maybe Monday or Wednesday. This is a phrase Reverend Master Jiyu used many, many years ago in offering teachings on the Soto Zen tradition and as an expression of the Buddha Dharma. This phrase can and does indicate paying respectful and mindful attention to all that we encounter in this world while invoking the guidance of compassion, wisdom, and following the precepts in our daily lives. Also, it is the transcending of apparent opposites in conditions we experience moment to moment, like heaven and earth, birth and death, right and wrong, praise and blame. It is the non-duality of phenomena, just as it is, that this phrase indicates, and leads you to what Reverend Master Jiyu called the third position, that which dwells upright and still in the middle of the opposing views, rather than having strong oppositional opinions that leads one to more difficulties. Dogen takes you beyond these opposites, and I think in one piece I read was radical non-duality. Through training, we are led to dwell in the third position as one actively practices through meditation and everyday activities, easing the confusion, the despair that plagues so many beings due to strong ideas, opinions, and judgments that are cultivated by holding on to these opposing and changing views. So the first essay in the Shoshogi is Introduction, the Reason for Training. And I want to express my gratitude and the delight to have had the opportunity to offer this week this particular teaching from the Shoshogi. And pray, it may be of benefit to all. Dogen says, the most important question for all Buddhists is how to understand birth and death completely. For then should you be able to find the Buddha within birth and death, they both vanish. All you have to do is realize that birth and death as such should not be avoided, and they will cease to exist, for then, if you can understand that birth and death are nirvana itself, there is not only no necessity to avoid them, but also nothing to search for that is called nirvana. Dogen goes on, the understanding of the above breaks the chains that bind one to birth and death. Therefore, this problem, which is the greatest in all Buddhism, must be completely understood. It is very difficult to be born as a human being and equally difficult to find Buddhism. However, because of the good karma that we have accumulated, we have received the exceptional gift of a human body and are able to hear the truths of Buddhism. We therefore have the greatest possibility of a full life within the limits of birth and death. It would be criminal to waste such an opportunity by leaving this weak life of ours exposed to impermanence through lack of faith and commitment. Impermanence offers no permanent succor. At this very minute, this body is not our own. Life, which is controlled by time, never ceases even for an instant. Youth vanishes forever once it is gone. It is impossible to bring back the past when one suddenly comes face to face with impermanence, and it is impossible to look for assistance from kings, statesmen, relatives, servants, wife, or children, let alone the wealth and the treasure that we may have. The kingdom of death must be entered by oneself alone, with nothing for company but our own good and bad karma. Avoid the company of those who are deluded and ignorant with regard to the truth of karmic consequences. the three states of existence, and good and evil. It is obvious that the law of cause and effect is not answerable to my personal will, for without fail, evil is vanquished and good prevails. If it were not so, Buddhism would never have appeared, and Bodhidharma would never have come from the West. None of us have more than one body during this lifetime. Therefore, it is indeed tragic to lead a life of evil as a result of heresy, for it is impossible to escape the karmic consequence if we do evil on the assumption that, by not recognizing an act of evil, no bad karma can accrue to us. Dogen eloquently explains the reasons why training is necessary and urges us to take up the practice of Buddha Dharma in order to resolve this most important question of birth and death, which will lead us into realizing our inherent Buddhahood, and to look at how we live. He points to the teachings on impermanence, ignorance, and the accumulation of good and bad karma, again viewing life in a dualistic way, which grounds our actions and thoughts into harmful ways of being, leaving us with all of our difficulties of dissatisfaction, confusion, and sorrow, and not knowing what to do. Initially, Dogen says we need to have faith and commitment in following the Dharma, so that we can prove it true for ourselves, thus clarify the truth of our being. This is done by cleaning up and resolving the karma of sorrow, despair, confusion, unhappiness, anger that we experience due to our ignorance, just as those who have gone before us do. Dogen guides us in the practice toward the path of becoming a spiritual adult, which does take great faith and commitment, and I would add patience. He uses the forms, words, and acts of Soto Zen to instruct us on how to meditate and how to live while walking this never-ending spiritual path of training and enlightenment. Freedom is gained by the recognition of our past evil acts and contrition therefore. This is the second essay that guides us in what our first steps is to begin our journey on the lifelong path of actualizing our Buddhahood. This beginning is the recognition that there is a way to live that will resolve the experience of dissatisfaction and open our body and mind to the compassion within. In addition to faith and commitment, it is necessary to allow ourselves to see that we do need to do something about ourselves and our predicament, and with compassion take responsibility for doing so. Dogen refers to this as an act of confession and contrition. Dogen says, because of their limitless compassion, the Buddhas and ancestors have flung wide the gates of compassion to both gods and men, and although karmic consequence for evil acts is inevitable, at some time during the 3 periods, contrition makes it easier to bear by bringing freedom and immaculacy. As this is so, let us be utterly contrite before the Buddhas. There is a confession verse. All the evil committed by me is caused by beginningless greed, hate, and delusion. All the evil is committed by my body, in my speech, and in my thoughts. I now confess everything wholeheartedly. With this act of confession and contrition, we step beyond the excuses and tendency to blame that usually comes with a defense of what we get up to. We then dedicate ourselves to following the Buddhist path, and as Dogen has said, confession eases the way. There's just something, for myself, when I read through this, I think of getting down on my knees and lifting up all that needs to be transformed and converted. and ask for all the help I can get. Now, to help beings move in this direction, Dogen introduced a group of ceremonies in Japan from what he witnessed taking place in Chinese Chan tradition, which were adapting the Mahayana Bodhisattva precepts. The ceremonies Dogen introduced are what we call jukai, on receiving the precepts. These are the guidelines, simply put, on what is good to do and what is not good to do as life unfolds, in order to live peacefully, upright, and contented. These are ceremonies for those who wish to dedicate themselves to living perceptually, to do as little harm as possible, and doing that which is beneficial for self and others. It is a formal commitment one publicly makes to begin or continue the cleaning up of karma, a practice one intentionally takes on by living ethically and kindly in practical ways. It gets right down to how one lives. This is becoming a spiritual adult and preparing the ground for the truth to reveal and express itself in all we do. Now, the third essay of the Shoshogi is receiving the precepts. These precepts are the 16 Mahayana Bodhisattva precepts, which include the 3 treasures, the 3 pure precepts, and the 10 great precepts. These are taken as descriptions of enlightened behavior rather than simply as proscriptions against evil acts. They lead to the signs of awakening: wisdom, compassion, and Dogen includes the 4 wisdoms: charity, tenderness, benevolence, and empathy, rather than guilt, shame, or self-blame and loathing. The 3 refuges shared by all Buddhists are the first and most foremost general precepts of all. We take refuge and pay homage to the 3 treasures: Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We take refuge in the Buddha, entrusting our life to the guidance of both the Buddhas who have appeared in this world and the Buddha nature within. Our meditation is a practical and simple and a daily thing that we do to take refuge in the Buddha. Take refuge in the Dharma. Go for direction to the teachings of all those who have walked this way before us and learned from our experience and the scriptures. Taking refuge in the Sangha. Seek the advice and the wise, compassionate counsel of those who share the love of truth and are committed to the middle way. When taken together as one ongoing precept, as one unified way of life, the 3 refuges and the 3 homages will guide and harmonize our understanding of all the other precepts. If any one of them is left out, you can just imagine, our training is like a stool with only a couple of legs, unstable, and I'm sure you could figure out tip over too. Dogen says, after recognizing our evil acts and being contrite therefore, we should make an act of deep respect to the 3 treasures of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, for they deserve our offerings and respect in whatever life we may be wandering. A pure heart is necessary if one would take refuge in the 3 treasures. At any time, whether during the Buddha's lifetime or after his demise, we should repeat the following with bowed heads, making gasho. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. If we would follow the Buddha's teachings, we must honor the 3 treasures. This foundation is absolutely essential before receiving the precepts. With the commitment made during this ceremony, we continue to acknowledge our human, messy condition and are willing to follow and take refuge in those who have gone before us in walking this path of practice and realization. This leads us to actualize the middle way and gives us the opportunity to pass on the teachings and practices to the next generation of those who follow us in the future, both laity and monastics. The three pure collective precepts follow the three treasures, and they must be accepted after these three treasures. And it's good to remember, we come back to that, these pure precepts are for you to practice and follow. The first one, cease from evil. First and foremost, may your wish be to live harmlessly. Consider this question: is what you are about to do a harmful thing, a wrongful thing, an unkind and unwise thing? On some level, evil does not exist. There are only unwise actions done in ignorance and confusion, and may you not do any such thing, whether to oneself or any other beings. Do only good is the second one. May you wish to do only that which accords with the truth of what the Buddha's Dharma points to. A question that would be good or wise to ask is, what you are about to do a kind and caring thing, suitable, and will do no harm? Does it tend toward liberation? These questions good to ask before taking action. And doing good for others. Pray that your every act will be of true benefit and that you never inadvertently create conditions which may lead others to do harm. Consider, what is about to be done truly of use? Is it fitting? Does it accord with the purification of your heart and benefit others? These three pure precepts are very easily utilized by incorporating them with the guidelines of the 10 precepts. And may it be your expressed wish to bring your spiritual practice into every act you perform with attention, dignity, decorum, and being upright in the third position, transcending the opposites and practicing the way of all acceptance. I have to admit, I have taken to making very long sentences. I think that came from Dogen. He kind of lives with you when you get involved in these things. So, the 10 great precepts. I know we're all familiar with them. I just have a wee comment to make after each one. Number 1, do not kill. May you learn to honor and respect all life. Number 2, do not steal. May you cultivate respect for others' property. Number 3, do not covet. May you learn to relinquish craving and grasping, and do not take what is not given. Number 4, do not say that which is untrue. May you cultivate that which respects truth and speak accordingly and kindly. Number 5, do not sell the wine of delusion. May you learn to relinquish any form of intoxicating delusion, whether drink, drugs, or emotional appeal of delusive thought. Number 6, do not speak against others. May you live in a way that nurtures respect for all beings and avoids gossip and frivolous speech, using gentle language. Do not be proud. Number 7, do not be proud of yourself and devalue others. May you relinquish the mental habits of judgments and opinions. Number 8, do not be mean in giving either dharma or wealth. May you nurture the practice of charity, generosity, and selflessness. Number 9, do not be angry. May you learn to relinquish impatience, aversion, anger, disgust, frustration, or hatred when it arises. And number 10, do not debase the three treasures. May you nurture reverence and respect for that which benefits all living things, and not deny the Buddha within ourselves or anyone else. Dogen says, within these precepts dwell the Buddhas, enfolding all things within their unparalleled wisdom. There is no distinction between subject and object for any who dwell herein. All things, earth, trees, wooden posts, bricks, stones, become Buddhas once this refuge is taken. From these precepts come forth such a wind and fire that all are driven into enlightenment when the flames are fanned by Buddha's influence. This is the merit of non-action and non-seeking, the awakening to true wisdom. The fourth essay is on awakening to the mind of a bodhisattva. Dogen encourages in our practice to awaken to the mind of a bodhisattva. This includes our intention of cultivating the path of practice and enlightenment to awaken to the true wisdom. And in the Mahayana tradition, there are teachings to make our everyday life the manifestation of bodhisattvahood. This includes the practice of Mahayana Bodhisattva precepts, what we just went over, and follow the vows of a bodhisattva, which are as follows. However innumerable beings may be, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible the passions may be, I vow to transform them all. However limitless the Dharma may be, I vow to comprehend it completely. However infinite the Buddha's truth is, I vow to realize it. Dogen says, when one awakens to true wisdom, it means that one is willing to save all living things before one has actually saved oneself. Whether a being is a layman, priest, god, or man, enjoying pleasure or suffering pain, he should awaken this desire as quickly as possible. However humble a person may appear to be, if this desire has been awakened, he is already the teacher of all mankind. A little girl of 7 even may be the teacher of the 4 classes of Buddhists and the mother of true compassion to all living things. Dogen goes on. The 4 wisdoms, charity, tenderness, benevolence, and sympathy, are the means we have of helping others and represent the Bodhisattva's aspiration to enact these qualities in our daily life. The 4 wisdoms are teachings and practices pointing to the way of a Bodhisattva who pays close attention to the details of how they live so that all beings may be able to benefit. These 4 wisdoms are charity. Charity is the opposite of covetousness. We make offerings although we ourselves get nothing whatsoever. There is no need to be concerned about how small the gift may be, so long as it brings true results. For even if it is only a single phrase or verse of teaching, it may be a seed to bring forth good fruit both now and hereafter. The second of the 4 wisdoms. To behold all beings with the eye of compassion and to speak kindly to them is the meaning of tenderness. If one would understand tenderness, one must speak to others whilst thinking that one loves all living things as if they were their own children. Whenever one speaks kindly to another, his face brightens and his heart is warmed. If a kind word be spoken in his absence, the impression will be a deep one. Tenderness can have a revolutionary impact upon the mind of man. Interestingly enough, just in the last day or two, I received a little book from a friend called Training in Tenderness. And I would like to offer a quote that has come from Pope Francis regarding tenderness. Last year, Pope Francis called for a revolution in tenderness. He described tenderness as a movement that starts from our heart and reaches the eyes, the ears, and the hands. Tenderness means to use our eyes to see the other, our ears to hear the other, our hands and our heart to comfort the other. Unquote. I think a revolution in tenderness could be helpful to oneself and all other beings. Number 3, benevolence. If one creates wise ways of helping beings, whether they be in high places or lowly stations, one exhibits benevolence. Benevolence helps everyone, including oneself, being a law of the universe. The fourth of the 4 wisdoms is sympathy. If one can identify oneself with that which is not oneself, one can understand the true meaning of sympathy. Sympathy does not distinguish between oneself and others. There are times when the self is infinite and times when it is true of others. Sympathy is as the sea in that it never refuses water from whatsoever source it may come. All waters may gather and form only one sea. The 5th essay is putting the teachings into practice and showing gratitude. And yesterday we heard a great deal about gratitude. And I think a little bit more certainly will fill the gold pot with a little bit more of the golden teachings on gratitude. It is something that we do continuously in our practice. Throughout the Shobogenzo, Dogen emphasizes the practice of gratitude for the Buddhas and ancestors of past, present, and future, who actualize and transmit the Dharma as it has unfolded over the generations. To express gratitude is not only in our daily lives and how we live, but it is also in all the ceremonial practice we do. In gratitude, we pay homage to, honor, and celebrate those who over the centuries have passed on the teachings of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and ancestors through meditation, bowing, making offerings, and chanting the scriptures. All acts of our ceremonial practice is an expression of our gratitude for Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and for all that we have received through these teachings and these Buddhas and ancestors who throughout the century did their practice and passed it on. Dogen says, the Buddha nature should thus be simply awakened in all living things within this world, for their desire to be born herein has been fulfilled. As this is so, why should we not be grateful to Shakyamuni Buddha? Because of consideration for others on the part of the Buddhas and ancestors, we are enabled to see Buddha even now and hear his teaching. Had the Buddhas and ancestors not truly transmitted the truth, it could never have been heard at this particular time. You need no further teachings than the above in order to show gratitude. And you show it, and you must show it truly in the only real way, in your daily life. Our daily life should be spent constantly in selfless activity with no waste of time whatsoever. All the Buddhas are within the one Buddha, Shakyamuni. And all the Buddhas of past, present, and future become Shakyamuni Buddha when they reach Buddhahood. This Buddha nature is itself the Buddha, and should you awaken to a complete understanding thereof, your gratitude to the Buddhas will know no bounds. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha.